to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. The world is still reacting to a seismic shift in US leadership as Donald Trump claims victory in the 2024 US presidential election. His return to the White House marks a clear pivot from the policies of the Biden administration, which emphasize multilateral cooperation, climate-focused economic engagement, and renewed international alliances. Trump's re-election has already drawn varied reactions globally. Leaders in countries like Israel and Hungary have expressed strong support, while European allies, including France and NATO, strike a more cautious tone, mindful of potential changes to trade policies and military funding expectations. There are no surprises that the election had immediate global economic implications. Under Biden, markets had seen optimism with semi-stable trade relations, climate cooperation, and a predictable approach, particularly through rejoining international agreements like the Paris Climate Accord. Now, global markets are responding to Trump's America First agenda, with the dollar surging and US stock futures rising as businesses anticipate policy shifts. On today's Channel's Business Global, we'll dive into how this change in US leadership will impact not only Europe and Asia, but also what it means for Africa. From trade and investment to security partnerships, Africa stands at a critical juncture. Our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey and Crestview strategy consultant Gillian Nysted will shortly be joining me here in the studio. But first, the highlights from this historic week.
Well, I want to thank you all very much. This is great. These are our friends. We have thousands of friends on this incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that. We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
Now, I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power.
Good morning. Good morning, good morning. Good to see this cabinet and the staff together here. For over 200 years, America has carried on the greatest experiment in self-government in the history of the world. And that's not hyperbole, that's a fact. We're the people. The people vote and choose their own leaders, and they do it peacefully. And we're in a democracy. The will of the people always prevails. Yesterday, I spoke with President-elect Trump to congratulate him on his victory. And I assured him that I would direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition. That's what the American people deserve. Yesterday, I also spoke with Vice President Harris. She's been a partner and a public servant. She ran an inspiring campaign, and everyone got to see something that I learned early on to respect so much, her character. She has a backbone like a ramrod. She has great character, true character. She gave her whole heart and effort, and she and her entire team should be proud of the campaign they ran.
Wednesday's Prime Minister's questions brought a spotlight to the UK's response to Donald Trump's return to the White House, with both Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and newly appointed Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch officially congratulating Trump on his victory. The tone was set for what could be a pivotal phase in UK-US relations. In her debut as leader of the opposition, Badenoch used Trump's win to question Labour's consistency on the US relationship, referencing past criticisms of Trump by members of Starmer's party. This exchange wasn't just about diplomacy. It set the stage for discussions on future policies critical to the UK, including trade, defence and climate commitments. Badenoch pressed the Prime Minister on issues like NATO spending, while Labour emphasised the importance of maintaining a strong special relationship with America.
Will the Prime Minister show that he and his government can be more than student politicians by asking you, Mr. Speaker, to extend an invitation to President Trump to address Parliament on his next visit?
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is giving a masterclass on student politics. But seriously, Mr. Speaker, we live in probably a more volatile world than we've lived in for many decades. It is absolutely crucial that we have a strong relationship, that strong special relationship forged in difficult circumstances between the US and the UK. We will continue to work, as we have done in the 4 months in government, on issues of security, our economy and global conflict.
The US is our single biggest trade partner. Given the risk of increased tariffs on UK exports, which threaten our manufacturing sector, will the Prime Minister commit now to continue the negotiations on our free trade agreement with the US, which the Biden administration cancelled when they came into office?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, of course we will discuss issues of our economy with the President-elect, as we already have done. Economy, security and global conflict are issues of real significance that ought to unite this House.
Mr. Speaker, President Trump is also right to argue that Europe needs to increase its defence spending. The last Conservative government committed to raising defence spending to 2.5% by 2030. Will the Prime Minister finally match this commitment?
Mr. Speaker, there is no more important duty than keeping the people of this country safe. And it was the Labour government that signed the NATO treaty in the first place, and we are strong supporters. We have a strategic defence review. We are committed to 2.5%. Well, I would remind the last time 2.5 was met was under the last Labour government. 14 years, and they never did it once.
Well, for more on this, I was earlier joined in the studio by our Downing Street correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, during Prime Minister's questions, I've got to say, even through the TV screen, you could feel the tension on the front bench of Sir Keir Starmer's government. It goes without saying that the Labour Party and the Republicans haven't seen eye to eye, but particularly the attacks against Donald Trump have been thick and fast over the past 4 years, in fact, the past 8 years. How is this special relationship going to blossom under a Trump tenure?
Well, it's a special day, isn't it? Welcome Kemi Badenoch to the dispatch box.
Of course.
First time that she's spoken. And yeah, she laid into Sir Keir Starmer and his Foreign Minister David Lammy about the comments that they've been making to Trump and about Trump. And it's quite a tough one, I think, for them, because they have met with Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago. And a few details have come out about that.
A couple of hours, apparently.
Yeah, apparently so. Apart from that, apparently David Lammy was offered seconds months. And so it seems to have been cordial, but it is quite hard to row back from what he said in 2018. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, Trump is not only a woman-hating, neo-Nazi, sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international world order. And Kemi Badenoch brought that up at Prime Minister's questions and said, will you invite him to speak to Parliament? Will we build on, what we have as a special relationship? It's our single biggest trading partner. So I think they're trying to row back on a couple of years of that. And it is going to be quite tough. But of course, the UK has to deal with America, as does the rest of the world. And all these leaders now, especially in Europe, are suddenly having to backtrack or try to make ways forward with a Trump presidency, a second Trump presidency. And he's not known for not going after people who've done him wrong in the past.
Revenge.
Exactly. He likes a bit of revenge. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I mean, Donald Trump is, Trump first, America first, and doesn't really care about anything else. So, if it's in America's interests, then he'll go for it, whatever that may be.
It's an interesting statement, because you say that, but you look at the markets. The market reaction was positive. Everybody said, including me, that the markets would be in turmoil, but they've reacted positively because they, a positive America is a positive rest of the world, surely.
Well, yeah, I think in terms of capitalism, and
yeah.
I think in terms of the West, and protecting the America's interests, the markets will respond like that because he's so finance-driven, isn't he, Donald Trump, and he's so economic-driven, and so I think, yeah, that's not so surprising. I think it'll be interesting to see how things unfold, because he said
it's early days.
He said on day one, didn't he, that he was going to go after this person, this person, this person. So he hasn't taken power yet, but it's going to be interesting when he does.
Well, they've been going after him for the past 4 years, Simon.
Yeah, no, they have, but he's also a convicted felon, and they've been going after him for
and president-elect.
And president-elect, yeah, the first time that's happened. So we're living in an interesting time.
We are.
But I think returning to Kemi Badenoch, obviously Nigerian-born, British-born Nigerian, I think quite a good sort of first time for her in Prime Minister's questions.
They can leverage on this.
Yeah, going after the government for Trump and for other things, and she looks quite sort of at home there at the moment. She's a fiery character, and she doesn't mind a bit of confrontation, and that's what PMQs is made for. So,
absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see how she does. I think I think that was quite a good debut for her, actually.
I think so. Congratulations to her. I do want to talk about British public response and British political bigwigs too. Obviously, Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister, he's been on a lot of US networks as well as British networks in Washington speaking about the election. We've had Nigel Farage endorsing Trump, as well as Liz Truss, former Prime Minister, too. Are you surprised that so many popular British statesmen have publicly backed Trump? What does that mean?
Well, I guess there's no real party for them, you could argue, here, right? The Conservative Party is so broad now.
Exactly.
There's a right wing that's moving to sort of reform, but this is kind of a natural place for them to swing to, I guess, if they are on the right of politics.
Yes.
And they're kind of championing the right, which in many countries seems to be taking off. So I guess for the Conservatives, for Kemi Badenoch, for people like that, this is a big victory, isn't it? This is not only a big victory for Trump and Conservatives in the United States, but around the world. It's to say, look, the Conservatives are making a comeback. They're coming back after years of sort of liberal democracy in the West.
Wokeism.
Right, exactly. And so that'll be music to Kemi Badenoch's ears.
Yeah.
It's. I think it's quite. People are still digesting this, aren't they?
We are digesting it. We're digesting it live as we speak.
Yeah.
I was saying to a previous guest, I just ripped up all the rule books. I want to ask your opinion on this, because you are a senior political hack, Simon. How did the pollsters get it wrong again? So wrong. We saw this in 2016, and it's happened again. It was neck and neck, too close to call. Everybody, Gen Z, millennials, are all for Kamala. It didn't work. Taylor Swift didn't work. Beyonce, Jennifer Lopez, the crying call. Oh gosh, they've smeared Puerto Rico. Puerto Ricans can't vote for them. They did.
Yeah,
black men voted for Donald Trump.
The Latino vote was huge for Donald Trump, and I don't think anyone saw that.
What happened?
I think it's a remarkable story, isn't it? You're right. The whole, not just the system, not just America, the whole world did not want this, really.
Yeah.
And so it is extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And I think it goes even further. I think people were thinking that the polls might have been overreacting or worried about the 2016, how they got it wrong. So they might have been going more for Trump than they actually were.
Oh, wow.
So I think there's quite a lot of, probably quite a few people voted who are sort of shy Trump voters who weren't really talking about how they were going to do that, but they ended up voting for Trump.
It is going to be interesting, absolutely fascinating, the fact that Donald Trump has been re-elected President of the United States. Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you.
Coming up on Channel's Business Global, I'll be analysing more reacts on Trump's victory with Gillian Neisted, a consultant at Crestview Strategy. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. As Donald Trump prepares to return to the White House, his past approach to Africa is sparking questions about what a second Trump term could mean for the continent. During his previous administration, Trump's Africa policy was defined by a business-first focus, with initiatives like Prosper Africa aimed at boosting US trade and countering China's influence. However, his approach was not without controversy. Blunt comments about African nations and proposed foreign aid cuts led to criticism from African leaders. While Trump prioritised economic engagement over traditional aid, he maintained security partnerships in regions like the Sahel, focusing on counter-terrorism while scrutinising China's investments in African infrastructure. Notably, Trump did not visit the continent, signalling a different diplomatic tone, but he retained popularity in some African nations, where his approach to business and assertiveness resonated with segments of the population.
Trump is still the best option they have in that presidency now. If they want to elect any other person to be the president of USA, it's going to be Trump. The reason is that he has more idea of how to run those things. Though he may be someone that talks too much. Yes, it may be someone that talks too much, that has almost whatever he wants to do, he has been saying it. Instead of having some kind of hidden agenda, he don't have any hidden agenda. He wants to say everything he wants to do. He's just someone like that. But he's someone that wants to work.
Today, if Trump returns to the international stage with everything that is happening, and knowing that Trump is not pro-war, I believe this will rebalance exchanges and challenge Europe, which is also currently losing some momentum. This will restore balance in international relations, which I think is a good thing. As for immigration, he may be strict, but today, each country needs to rediscover itself. We as Africans need to retain our youth. We really need our young people. We just need to train them, help them find their footing, and then ultimately build our countries because we need it.
I think Trump is a good president for Americans. I believe in his wisdom.
I don't know. I think with finance and, currency-wise, it might affect it, but depends on how President Ramaphosa and how our government is able to work with them as well. So yeah, I'm very iffy about it.
I earlier discussed this and more with Gillian Neisted, a consultant at public affairs firm Crestview Strategy. Gillian Neisted, it's an absolute pleasure having you in the studio. There's so much to talk about. Everything that I had arranged has been ripped up. And I think most political pundits have been ripping up the rule book because we predicted it was going to be neck and neck, that it was too close to call. But according to the results, it wasn't. How did we get it so wrong?
Well, first, can I say, wow, the day has finally come. November 5th, for some, couldn't come soon enough, as this campaign feels like it's been going on for ages. It doesn't feel exactly like 2016, when we were all shocked to our cores that Hillary Clinton lost. But it is surprising because we were expecting to see this election called by 100,000 votes maybe, and those margins were much wider, though not huge, but in terms of an American election, a couple points is quite significant. So safe to say, some people are surely wondering what went wrong, what they didn't pay attention to this morning, and others are just met with a bunch of surprise. But one thing is sure, the American people must persevere, accept the outcome, and move on.
I suppose you've got to agree with those who describe it as the biggest political comeback in history, especially if you look through what Donald Trump has faced over the past 4 years. We won't do it now. We don't have to, because it's plastered all over every network across the world. But let's park Donald Trump at the moment and talk about Vice President Kamala Harris. Let's talk about what she has done for female participation in politics, not just in the US, of course. We're talking about her in London.
No, I mean, Kamala Harris is a huge inspiration, and what she's managed to do in the past 107, 108 days since becoming the nominee has been absolutely incredible. She has energized a Democratic Party that really was snoozing at the idea of another Biden term. And it was, if you asked anybody, if you asked myself in June of this year, been a done deal. I wouldn't have been surprised at all with the results we saw this morning, UK time. That said, Kamala, this energy should be by the people, should be taken and used for future elections. It cannot die today. There's so much potential in both the Democrat Party, the Republican Party, to take the energy that Kamala Harris and a younger generation of politicians in the United States can bring. Unfortunately, we just didn't see it in the turnout for the Democrats yesterday.
But does that energy translate, Gillian? Because we've seen it time and time before, and I think our viewers watching in Nigeria will be familiar with this, because we had something similar with the obedient movement during the Tinubu campaign, that if you were somebody focused on social media, so let's focus on TikTok now, all you were seeing was Kamala's cackle and, some of her funny memes and gaffes. But that didn't translate, did it? It seems as if podcasts was the platform to be on. So perhaps we got it wrong in thinking that, the momentum was with her purely because of what was in our algorithm.
Sure. I mean, I think the problem of the algorithm is something to be discussed. Yeah. But at the same time, just TikTok ads are not going to win an election, and neither are podcast appearances, I think.
Or celebrity endorsements.
Exactly.
Beyonce, Taylor Swift, they didn't bring in the numbers.
No, and it's surprising to see that overwhelming amount of support in Hollywood, but it's very clear by the results that what the American people care about is the amount of money in their bank accounts at the end of the year, and the economy has been the one ruling issue of this campaign, and that's why we've seen the results we have. So going forward, candidates might want to look at how they use TikTok and podcasts. Obviously, Joe Rogan's endorsement of now President-elect Trump is a big deal, but at the same time, those single pieces alone don't win an election.
Clearly not. I want to ask about Africa. I know that Crestview Strategy, you're a consultant at that firm. They do extensive relationship interest. They've got a lot of interest on the African continent. You spent a lot of time there. Are you quite surprised that a lot of Africans on social media, at least, appear to be supporting Trump, and they're pretty happy at his victory?
As an advisor to African governments, one thing I can say is it's not so black and white. Preferring one political party in the West, in the United States, to win over another is not going to solve the continent's issues. They are vast and complex, and each government has different issues to face. What I can say is, historically, Democrats have been associated with interventionism and taking policy recommendations from human rights organizations and NGOs, where Republicans are viewed as much more transactional and looking for the economic benefit in those relations.
So you're kind of less under the thumb, because we're kind of shifting away from those post-colonial ties, all the rules and the stipulations and the regulations. We want action. We want to do business.
Absolutely. And the one thing I gain from talking to my clients and my friends across the continent is that they're tired of Western governments telling them how they should run their countries. And those days should be well in the past. And we'll see what happens. Africa is not high on the Trump administration or campaign's priority list. But you never know. Joe Biden had done some great things in terms of securing trade routes such as the Libido corridor. It's unclear whether or not that will continue, but one thing's for sure is in terms of, talking about social justice and problems of democracy on the continent, I think that many governments will be happy to see a Trump White House.
How do you think Britain are going to navigate, well, not Britain, I'd say the Labour Party going to navigate Donald Trump when so many senior figures within the party are repulsed by him?
It's safe to say a Trump victory is not what the Labour government, Keir Starmer, David Lammy wanted, but that is what they've got, and I think it's their responsibility to have prepared for it. I know Lammy certainly regrets making those statements at
Does
this
he?
point in time.
Has he said that?
That's a question for him. But what I can say is, you know, working with the Trump administration on foreign policy and geopolitics is a challenge for every government, not just the UK. We've known Trump to have a revolving door of officials. It is still not yet clear who his cabinet appointees may be. And also, he doesn't seem to be held to any international trade agreements that the United States has entered into. So, sure, Keir Starmer and David Lammy have a tough road ahead, as do other leaders across both Western and Southern governments.
Gillian Nystad, who is a consultant at Crestview Strategy, thank you so much for your time and expertise.
Thank you, Juliana.
Today. Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.